The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Wednesday. Sorry, it's Monday. I'm so sorry. It is Monday, July the 20th, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. We've got a great show for you today. We have two psychotropic drug stories for you live here on CHD TV. Danny is back as well to talk about, well, various issues. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Sherri is coming on. You're going to want to hear her story as well. But let's start with this. Why are the unvaccinated children in 2026 sick? In 2016-17, when I was on the bus, we were interviewing the unvaccinated children, and the parents report they're perfectly fine, perfectly healthy, no seizures, no cancer, none of those things. But now, 2026, we are seeing a different story. So who better to talk about this than Patricia Lemer, her new book, Total Load Theory. Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning, Polly.
Thank you for being here so early.
Well, thank you.
Right, so we have a problem, and it's a problem that's new to me because I've just been out on the road interviewing unvaccinated families. And of course, on the whole, these children are superbly healthy and brilliant. But what disturbs me is that we're seeing for the first time issues, type 1 diabetes in the unvaccinated child. We're seeing cancer in children with that are totally unvaccinated. We are seeing lots of Lyme disease and various other issues. Why are we seeing this?
Well, I think, Polly, the world has gotten more and more toxic, and we are doing more and more things that go against the body and the brain's intuition and its ability to heal and to stay healthy. We have practices in our society and in schools and in our families that are just not begatting good health.
Yeah, and we said, well, one particular 5-year-old girl, beautiful, healthy child, suddenly got very, very sick and was ended up in hospital, diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Cut a long story short, they found high levels of arsenic and lead in this child's blood. So what? And they think that it potentially is coming from the water. But the water board will say, oh, everything's within its limits, safe and effective. So it's very difficult to get to the root of where these poisons are coming from.
Well, Polly, they're coming from everywhere. They're coming from the soil, from our food, from the air, from our water, and they just add up. This is an accumulation of toxins and practices that are not conducive to health. And that's what I wrote about in my book, all these different factors. And that's what total load theory is. It's the accumulation of factors that disturb the body's natural processes.
And mold was a big one. A lot of parents talking
Mold
about
is
mold.
huge. Mold is huge. And with climate change and storms, we are seeing mold in places that we have never seen it before. People didn't know they had leaky roofs. They didn't know their toilet leaked. They didn't know their refrigerator pan had mold in it. And all these things add up, Polly. It's what happens to a bridge when a bridge collapses. That's where the total load idea comes from, is engineering and bridges. I live in Pittsburgh. We have over 400 bridges, and they're all in terrible shape, and every once in a while one collapses. And it's not that straw that breaks the camel's back, that last 18-wheeler that goes over the bridge that is responsible. It's all those accumulated toxins that make that bridge collapse, that make that body collapse, that make that child vulnerable to that tick bite, to that mold in the house, to that vaccine, or the rice that might have arsenic in it from China. There's so many places that these toxins come from.
And so, what should parents do? Because it's actually causing great anxiety. I mean, one unvaccinated family told me They left their house with mold, and they bought land and they rebuilt a house. And that new house ended up having mold in as well, because the beams the house was built on had mildew in it. And so it's terribly hard in this day and age to bring up a healthy child.
Well, it works both ways. You want to reduce your exposures, and that's what that family did by moving. But you also have to build up the body's ability to deal with our toxic world by eating well, by eating organic, by filtering your air and water, by making sure that that body is able to withstand any assault that comes from the air, the food, the water, the soil.
And Patricia, what about EMR? Should we be very concerned about the elect?
Absolutely. And there's a brand new book called Unplug by my friend Dr. Rob Brown, who talks about the dangers of electromagnetic fields. And these towers are going up everywhere. They're thousands of times stronger than the original towers. That's what the number in front of the G. We started with 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. We're up to 5 and 6G, bombarding our bodies, bombarding our nervous systems, and bombarding the bugs that live in our bodies and our food and our air. And these bugs don't like the electromagnetic fields either. And so they put out toxins, which is an additional problem for our bodies and our brains.
And Patricia, I spoke to a mother the other day who said that she was now trying to grow her own food, spent a lot of money into doing that. But she said, nothing is growing. And she's not the first person to say this. They're struggling for food to grow like it used to grow. Is that because of what they're spraying in the skies?
It's part of the problem. Everything is a little bit. You eat a little bit of this poison, you breathe a little bit of that poison. And if your body is not strong, it is not able to deal with all of these poisons. And our practices are problematic too. Our families are listening to our doctors who tell us to make babies sleep on their backs. Babies on their backs are upside down neurologically. We should be on their tummies where their eyes and their hands can link. We have schools that are stressing kids out. They're pushing academics prematurely. We have families that are estranged from each other, and these estranged relationships are very difficult for our children. And so it's sociological, it's psychological, it's not just environmental, but the environmental assaults are the ones that break the camel's back. They're the straws that make a problem. And especially in kids who aren't eating well, who are not sleeping well, who are having Wi-Fi on at night. We have to take away these problems with our environment so that kids have a healthy environment and have healthy food and healthy sleep. Kids are not getting enough sleep. Sleep is when your body heals. Sleep is when the body takes out the garbage. Sleep is when our body readjusts and gets stronger and we wake up ready to deal with this toxic world.
And so one family that I interviewed recently, the mother said to me, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. My children they're fine. And we eat super well. I could not be more crunchy, says this mother. But every now and then, these children have these crazy meltdowns where they're almost demon possessed. And so I'm like, well, is your Wi-Fi on? I mean, I'm trying to help her figure it out, but there's so many things it could be.
There are so many things it could be. And we can't control beyond our home. I have a friend who one day looked out the window and there was a new cell phone tower a few feet from his house, zapping him. And we can't control that, but we can control how much sleep we get, how much good food we eat, and what our relationships are about, and make sure that we don't have too much toxic too many toxic people in our lives who are degrading our health.
Right. And now, Patricia, as we approach, I think it's next month when children start to go back to school in America, how can people, I mean, a lot of parents are very concerned about things like, how do I know if there's a cell tower, in the wall of my child's classroom? How do I know what toxins are around my child? I mean, personally, now that I know better, do better, all that kind of thing. If I was a young mum, there's no way my kids would go to school, but that's another subject. But so what do they do to prepare their child for school?
We have to make sure that they get enough sleep. I can't emphasize that enough. Kids are going to bed too late, and the school systems are making them wake up too early to get on that bus. Sometimes in the winter, it's still dark. And this is not good for kids. We've got to work with our school systems to adjust the school hours. Those original hours were for farming communities where kids had to be home by 2:30, 3 o'clock to help on the farm. Now we use those after school hours for sports, which are important. And we have to have our kids moving, moving, moving. But we also need to make sure they have enough and good sleep. We need to make sure that our school's lunch program is good food. It is not junk. It has to be good quality, hopefully organic, but that's fantasizing that a school is going to serve organic food. But we want kids to eat fruits and vegetables and not just eat junk. So we need to educate our educators on what a good school system looks like. And we need to let kids be kids and let them play and have recess and move out on the playground and not sit all day long and have screens in front of them. We need to put pencils in their and pens in their hands and let them move and grow and kids be kids.
And Patricia, I'm hearing from parents that even in schools, they're putting them on screens now.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
All the learning is taking place now on the computers. And this is not good for kids' eyes. It's not good for their brains. And if you know, Polly, from our previous talks, how much I care about vision, we need to protect those eyes with glasses if they're farsighted, of glasses that are stress reducing lenses. So our kids, some of them need special glasses to be able to tolerate the stress of the near screens all day long.
Yeah, and we had another, I think it was Dr. Suzanne Humphreys that was on at some point, and she was saying that children need to be barefoot running around. And then mother told me the other day that, okay, fine, barefoot in our garden, but a lot of the grounds are toxic with astroturf, with chemicals. It's like almost dangerous to be barefoot in this day and age.
Right. Even the playgrounds with the fake astroturf, and they're problematic. And we used to have arsenic in the telephone poles that playgrounds were made out of. Now we've replaced that with toxic chemicals on the playgrounds. So washing hands is important and helping kids move, 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 and to antidote the sitting, sitting, sitting.
And get yourself big tubs of magnesium, Epsom salts. Everybody,
Right.
every night, have your kids bathe in Epsom salts.
Epsom
With
salt baths.
no chemicals.
Right, right, right. So
Because
I talk about this in my book, in my total load theory. This is such an important book, Polly, because it's not just about autism. It's about attention deficit disorder, learning disabilities, sensory processing problems, and all the areas of mental health, depression, anxiety. We're seeing this increasingly in kids because their toxic loads are so heavy.
And Patricia, how can people get this book? Because you know what I think, everybody? I think this is the book you send to the unvaccinated families. I think this is what it's crucial for.
Thank you, thank you. It's available everywhere, online, on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. Tell your library, your local library, that they should carry it. And it's such an important book. It's over 600 pages. It has a wonderful index. It also has an AI companion to it, so you can put in any question. If you go to totalloadtheory.com or patricialemer.com, you can access the AI companion that you can ask any question. And you can do that for free until you purchase the book, and then you have unlimited ability to ask questions in several languages. You can do it up in 8 or 9 languages now. We're working on its ability to do it in up to 70 different languages, and to do it by voice with me answering you as if I speak fluent Mandarin Chinese and French. It's a remarkable program that I am so lucky to have.
Well, Patricia Lemer, thank you so much for being on this morning. Your knowledge is amazing and for sounding the alarm on other environmental toxins that our children are in. And we shall for sure be getting that book. So thank you so much for being on this morning, Patricia.
Thank you, Polly, for having me again. I love coming on CHD TV. It's such an honor.
We love having you. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. So now we're going to go to Sherri Underland and we're going to go to Bob Schwartz. Good morning, both of you.
Good morning, Polly.
It's good to have you here, Bob. Thank you so much for bringing us these such important stories. My goodness.
You know what, Polly, can't thank CHD TV and the whole CHD family for supporting this advocacy. You know, you and I met 4 years ago when I first produced and told my story about if I had known the risk. And it's bringing the awareness, caution, and accountability to the psychotropic medication industry, especially with our children. And today we have another great story to share with you, like Danny's from last week. But we have Sherri Underland, who really talks about with the withdrawal, akathisia, and polypharmacy of her own story. And I think she also has an ADHD story to share with you. So let me turn it over to you guys right now and share this story.
All right, Bob, we'll see you back on the show a bit later today. All right, so Sherri, thank you. It says in my notes that you're a grandmother. I cannot. There's no way you're a grandmother. I'm sorry.
Going to be eight grandchildren very soon.
Sherri, okay, so talk us through your story and your son's story, please.
Well, I'll start with my son because that goes back to the 90s. I was a young mother, and the doctors in the school both said, your son's ADHD, he needs to be medicated. And I listened. I believed what my doctors told me. And I started my son on Adderall and Concerta and a whole host of other medications that we tried with different side effects. He took these medications for years, and he decided he didn't want to take them anymore. He stopped, but I think he kind of self-medicated, and then that brought him to drugs. And he was a heroin addict for many years. He's 34 years old now. That's a picture of actively using at the time. But there were many times I thought I was going to lose him to heroin into the streets. And he's been clean for several years now. He has a family of his own, and we got him through it. But I believe that the ADHD and those medications led to the drug use.
Can we just talk about that for a second? Because I find this incredibly disturbing. So basically, he's 7 years old. And again, people, there's a whole history here, exactly the same. It's the schools. So the school, just because your child can't sit on a chair, I don't think little boys should be sitting on chairs anyway. And just because he doesn't obey and say what they say, then he becomes a problem. That is the bottom line to me, is that he didn't fit in with what the norm should be for the school. This is why schools are so dangerous. And so long story short, he ends up on ADHD medication. And it's addictive. It's hard to get off these, as we've been hearing from all of Bob's stories.
It's basically meth. We gave our children methamphetamines.
And people need to know this. And then your son grows up and becomes an addict because
Yes.
of his lifestyle from 7 years old. That is disgraceful. That is not your fault. That is totally the doctor's fault. And the money that they make from prescribing medication to your son, it disgusts me, starting from the school.
Yes. The doctor who prescribed the medications later, when we were looking for Suboxone to help him get off the maintenance drugs, he became the pediatrician, actually became the, I call it, drug dealer, who was prescribing Suboxone out of the other side of his office.
Yeah, it's these, and this is just a normal doctor, or is it a psychiatrist type doctor?
This was a pediatrician.
No, it's disgraceful. And they have no qualifications to be diagnosing children, and
Right.
certainly on drugs. I think it's barbaric and child abuse. And again, coming from the medical professionals. And so today he's married, and you've helped him, and he's getting there, right? He's off. He's off.
He's off, he's clean, he's hardworking, owns a home, has a family, children. So yes, it's possible.
But Sherri, let's remind people how fortunate he is, because for a great many others, that is not the outcome.
It is not the outcome, and we live close to Philadelphia, where there is a major heroin community. He was down there, and people don't get out of there. It's not good.
No. So tell us about you.
So I have always had panic attacks from the time I was young. In my early 30s, I was prescribed an SSRI. I'm still on the SSRI. I probably went to 2 or 3 different ones. Every time I tried to stop, the doctors thought it was relapse. Here's another one, try this. So about 2018, I started to try to come off of it. There was no information available about tapering at the time. So I just would break pills in half. I would skip doses. And I did that for a couple years. I really wasn't in a hurry to get off. I would get headaches. I would have brain fog. So I was doing it what I thought was very slow. And when I finally stopped in 2022, I didn't realize how low you had to go when you stopped. So I would say it was probably less than 5 milligrams, maybe 2, 3 milligrams. Within 2 months, I was bedridden. I had akathisia, and it took me about a year till I could stabilize enough to start tapering again. I met with Dr. Horowitz. He did my taper plan. And I've been tapering ever since, from 2023. Now it's 2026, and I'm still tapering. I'm at about 2.33 milligrams, and I probably have another year or two until I could get off, because my nervous system is so sensitive after having akathisia that it's very hard to make reductions, and it's very slow.
Sherri, I really worry a lot about people who, I mean, let's, for example, years ago when my dad died, I went to take my daughter to a pediatrician, a family doctor, to get something signed off for school. And she said to me, "You look really sad. What's wrong with you?" And I said, "My dad's just died." And she gave me 5 prescriptions. Of course, I didn't use them, but 5 prescriptions for go to sleep, wake up. I don't know, anxiety. I don't even know what they were for. But that is how easy people can take medication. So my point here is, how do we warn those people? What do they say to you? But Sherri, I'm so depressed. I'm so sad. My dad's died. My family's fighting. I don't know, whatever it is that makes people sad. How do we stop them going and getting on this medication? What alternatives are there to make people come out of this?
Well, I think it's hard. These are situational reasons for anxiety that don't need to be medicated. When somebody dies, of course you're going to be upset and depressed for a while. That's normal. We have to go back to the fact that there are normal reactions to situations that we need to get through, and therapy, exercise, daylight, you know, just getting through and working through the problem that you're having at the time will help, not medication. And then you're stuck on these medications for years and you can't get off of them.
And let's talk a bit about the side effects because, I mean, from what we've been hearing with these stories, the side effects are worse than how you were feeling in the first place.
Well, the side effects when you're on it for years, I didn't have any problems except weight gain and major fatigue. It was when I tried to get off that I had the issues. And I went to the doctor. I couldn't sit still. I was moving my hands and shaking my legs. And the doctor said to my husband, "Oh my God, look, her anxiety is so bad. I think we should add these pills." And then they added Klonopin and they added Boost Bar. So they were two other drugs that during the time that I had akathisia, they added on and they wanted to switch me to a different antidepressant, actually an SNRI, which I wouldn't take. I did stop taking the other two medications. I stopped cold turkey, which brought on other issues. And the doctors just don't really understand the difference between relapse and withdrawal. And that's what we need them to understand and learn.
And Sherri, just going back to children for a second, a teacher's assistant told me that at lunchtime at this particular school, they ring a bell and all the kids line up for their medication. She
Oh,
said
God.
only like a few that are not on them.
Well, this is something else. My daughter works with autistic children. She's a BCBA, and she told me a story about one of the children being prescribed a benzo at 3 years old. My heart broke when I heard that. And there's nothing she could do because the doctor does the prescribing. She can't say anything. But I hear these stories and it breaks my heart.
But how can this be allowed? How can a 3-year-old be allowed to be put on drugs like that? How is that legal?
I don't understand how it is legal. I don't understand how they, where the pharmaceutical companies say that a 3-year-old can have this drug. This is it. It's unbelievable to me. I don't understand it.
Sherri, why do you do what you do? Because you could just stay quiet and get on with your own life. Why are you here talking about it? Why are you speaking up? Because I'm sure you get attacked for doing this.
I stayed quiet for a couple of years. I was embarrassed. Between 2022 and probably a year or so ago, I really didn't say a lot. And then I started seeing more and more people speak up. And I thought, why am I embarrassed? I need to let people know what's going on. I need to let them know what happened to me. I also started a support group on Facebook for people who are coming off of Prozac, which is what I'm on. There's a ton of different Facebook groups for different medications and SSRI withdrawal in general. But I think it's just very important to let people know before this happens to them. I had no idea what happened to me. I had no idea why it happened. People need to know and have informed consent going on these medications. They need to know the risks, the benefits. They need a clear plan on how to get off of these medications, and they need to be on them for 6 months maybe. They should not be long term. They should not be a lifetime. You shouldn't call your doctor and say, "Okay, it's time for my refill," and they hit a button and just refill it.
Sherri, wouldn't you say that psychotropic drugs just mask the symptom? They don't get to the root cause. It's like people who drink alcohol as well. It's masking the
Yes.
rather than, I don't know. And by the way, viewers, I am not holier than thou. Let me get used to, I understand pain. I understand crying, sobbing your heart out till you think your heart's not going to, cope with anymore. I understand all of that. But I want to make sure that we stop certainly these kids, because your son's story is so important. ADHD medication at 7 and then going on to be addicted to hardcore drugs. That is a horrible story. It was with a great outcome, thanks to you and your hard work.
It is. Thank God we had a great outcome with that. But yes, it's very scary. A lot of these medications, and we talk about psychotropics, but it's other things as well. Quick story, I had a surgery, I had nerve pain. They said, "Here, you should take Lyrica or gabapentin." And I said, it's going to go away in a couple months. I don't need to take another addicting medication. And how long would you take it for? When does it stop? You don't know when you get better if you're masking it with medications.
Yeah, and you're right to talk about pain again. Had another story where the son had back injury when he was a child, addicted to painkillers, and now will do anything at any cost to get hold of painkillers in anyone's house that he can hear. I mean, it's become, his life is destroyed through the.
Yes, and that they chase it. Yes, I lived that for years watching my son. I mean, my God, they would probably sell their soul just to get another fix, which isn't the same with psychotropic medications. We get dependent and we need it, but we don't chase a high, and we don't, we wouldn't rob a bank to be able to get a next fix like they do. It was horrible. It's horrible when our children go through that. It's horrible to watch.
And so, what's your big takeaway? What is the big thing you want parents listening right now, people to know?
Any of these drugs, there are other ways, therapy, get your children outside, exercise, just like we heard in the last segment. You know, drugs should not be the first line of defense. It should be the second or the third. We should get our children outside, exercising, keep them off of computers, away from the screens, eat healthy, eat organic. Yeah, that's what I would say. Go to the doctor second.
That's great advice, and so grateful. Let's bring Bob back on for a second. Bob, how can we stop? I mean, Sherri just talked about a 3-year-old being given medication. I mean, how is that legal? How can we stop this? It should be illegal for children to be on any medication.
Polly, this is again, these are crimes against humanity. And when we were sitting here talking about the ADHD drug, which I took for 5 days, Polly, and it altered my life. I lost my family. I lost my career. But by the grace of God, and really finding that spiritual healing, I've been able to turn my life around and help others through my story. And you know what? When I was listening to what Sherri was saying, it's important that the people that are out there that are living in silence, stigma, and shame, the healing is going to come with truth, transparency, and trust. And I hope that we wake the country up to this crisis. Again, as I said last week, last year there was 337 million prescriptions for antidepressant medication. We had 27% of the country that are on benzos. This is a national safety public crisis that we have going on, and we must take action immediately.
Yeah, and Bob, we're so grateful to you for standing alone. Now, if people out there have a story, they can contact you, can't they, in confidence? You don't have to come to us and be on CHD TV, but you can go to Bob. And Bob, where do they go?
They go to RxISK, RxISK.org or com, and they can watch the documentary film. They can learn about all these drugs or medications, the ADHD, the anti-anxiety, the anti-depression, and they can share their story there.
All right, Bob, thank you so much. And we'll see you again soon because we're getting Danny on in a second. But Sherri, I just want to say to you, thank you so much for being on this morning. And we're so pleased that your son, Lou, can we pull that picture up? And he's got a beautiful child. Is that his daughter with him?
That's his daughter, and he just had another son. So yeah, he has 2 now.
Look, see, recovery is possible. So there's the hope, people.
Yeah.
But really, the warning that Sherri is giving you is, look, when your school tells you your child needs medication or needs to see a doctor, I'll tell you what, take that child out of that school immediately.
Sherri, thanks so much for
If
your
I
courage
knew
coming
now
on
what
today.
what I didn't know then, it would have been very different. Thank you for having me.
Sherri, if we'd all known what we knew then, life would be very different, I can tell you. But
Yes.
like I said, when we know better, we do better, and that's why this is so important that we're talking about. Sherri, thank you for being on this morning. We so appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
Wow, Bob, she's amazing. And now we're going to bring on Danny again. Danny's back, everybody. You saw her not that long ago. And Danny, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you so much for having me again. I really appreciate the opportunity to bring light to these incredibly important hidden issues.
Right. And so you wrote to us and said, there's more to talk about. So talk to us, tell us more, because we could not learn enough about this subject.
Yeah, so there's a very serious brain injury that antidepressants can cause where some people who have taken an SSRI human, never regain normal emotional or sexual function, even decades after stopping the drug. So some people are left with permanent, devastating consequences from drug-induced physical damage to the nervous system. So it's called PSSD. So PSSD can leave people with like a constellation of chronic life-altering impairments, including complete genital numbness, zero libido, the inability to feel romantic or sexual attraction, where people literally wake up feeling asexual. But this condition goes far beyond lifelong sexual dysfunction. I think the worst part and what drives many people to take their own lives is the emotional blunting. It can induce anhedonia, which is a complete inability to feel pleasure or joy, with this total loss of emotional and reward response. So it basically strips away the very capacities that make us human, leaving people disconnected from themselves and the people they love, and really from life itself. But which can have really obvious consequences for relationships and family life and just general quality of life. And something that's not talked about enough with these injuries is it can also cause very severe, profound cognitive dysfunction. So people experience like a loss of internal dialogue, loss of imagination. It can take away your creativity. It's almost like having a chemical lobotomy is what it feels like. And alongside that, people also experience
I think we might be losing.
debilitating neurological symptoms. So like sudden onset tinnitus. Oh shoot, I think it's a little delayed. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so people experience like a whole subset of symptoms, a wide variety, and they can get really bad visual snow, onset tinnitus, and just severe dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. And so these drugs are psychoactive chemicals and they act directly on the central nervous system. So I think I theorize in people with PSSD that it's like the profound injury and dysregulation of the nervous system helps explain why this condition can be so widespread and devastating, because it really affects every part of your body, because it damages that central control system.
So this is devastating. And again, parents need to be warned about this, because you think, oh, my child can't sit on a seat, let's give him some medication, and then his future is destroyed because of that. Just another. And is this common side effect? Is something that's common or not so common?
Yeah, so it's not. So PSSD is significantly under-recognized and under-reported. So we still don't know its true prevalence because patients are never diagnosed because doctors still deny that it even exists. So there's actually an entire online community of 20,000 members on Reddit of people living with PSSD, which continues to significantly grow. As awareness spreads, more and more people are recognizing symptoms that they never knew could be related to antidepressants in the first place. So they finally discover there's a condition of what happened to them. And because a lot of people, when this happens, they see multiple physicians, undergo extensive testing, being told, or they're just simply told their symptoms are psychological or unrelated to the medication or impossible, that can't be caused by the medication. So but really, if you look at these, if you just type in PSSD on Twitter or on Reddit, you'll see all these devastating stories of people going through the same thing, all from induced by antidepressants and feeling like their life is no longer worth living.
So basically, the depression from that, which I can imagine is immense, makes you want to almost be on medication again because you can't cope with life. So you're going round and round circles.
Right, because basically people become so depressed and it's not depression in the sense of a typical depression. It's more like the physical and emotional devastation caused by the nervous system injury because they're not able to feel emotions. They can't connect with life itself, results in so many people taking their lives with this condition. And it's actually a real physical injury. So there's actually a study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine that examined previously healthy young men in their 20s who develop persistent sexual dysfunction after exposure to antidepressants. The researchers found measurable physical damage on ultrasound, revealing scarring, nerve cell death, and tissue abnormalities in their genital tissue. These are changes normally seen in men decades older with serious vascular disease. So these findings provide evidence of SSRIs inducing actual physical damage, not just psychological or something that stops after discontinuation. It's real physical damage to the nervous system.
And Danny, so if there's someone watching now who says, that's me, but I'm really embarrassed, I don't want to talk about it. It's, a lot of people will be embarrassed by this conversation. Is there somewhere they can go privately and have this conversation with someone?
Yeah, so there's actually like a whole community of people. A really good place to go to is the PSSD Network, which is a nonprofit organization that is raising money to fund research into this condition. And there's a whole network of people going through this, even online. But I'm happy to talk to anyone about it. I'm here. My inbox is open. And I think too, I just thought about this. I think what's really concerning about this condition is it's happening to children. So parents are never told that these drugs have the potential to permanently affect some of our most fundamental human capacities. And parents have absolutely no way of knowing this could happen to them or their children. And they're completely blindsided when it does. Because it's not anywhere on the FDA labels and doctors are completely unaware it exists. And there's young adults in the prime of their lives who unknowingly become essentially chemically castrated, emotionally lobotomized by a drug they're told is completely safe. And how this can affect people is you can lose your ability to fall in love, reproduce, start a family, experience some of the most beautiful parts of life. And it's really just not fair. And my parents, for instance, I was put on antidepressants at 7 years old, but they were never given a chance to protect me because they were never told that these risks existed, like that these serious adverse effects still do not appear on FDA warning labels. And it's such a failure.
And Danny, can people get help for it? Or is this something this is the way it is?
Yeah, and that's what makes it so upsetting is there's no cure, there's no way to recover function. Some people do see healing like over decades. Like for some people, they see healing in a couple years, some see healing after 10 years. But to live with these effects for so long is that's insane. But much of the research, like into PSSD is being funded by patients themselves through this small nonprofit PSSD network for the people who've been affected by it. But we really need NIH funding for high quality research to understand the underlying mechanism of PSSD and potentially get treatments for people to restore function in people who do have this 30 years out. And some, yeah, 30 years out. And I mean, some people are left with lasting impairments. It can happen even after taking the medication once. It doesn't have to happen from long-term use. You can I know someone who got it from taking it literally one time and woke up completely like disconnected from themselves and completely numb internally. No study has ever followed the course of sexual function, cognitive function, emotional function after discontinuation for the purpose of determining when and what degree these effects resolve if you ever go back to your baseline. And there's people, if you look on the forums, and it's been documented in case reports that have it for 20, 30 years and just cannot get their normal functioning back. And it's really devastating, which is why people in these positions take their life, because life is not worth living in that state.
And it's very sad. It's tragic, actually, to be honest with you. But I asked Sherri, what does a mum do when the school calls and says your child needs medicating, basically? Otherwise, we can't have him here.
Yeah, so when I think about that, I actually look back on my story because I think it's really scary how casually psychoactive chemicals, which is what these psychiatric drugs are given to children whose brains are still developing. You have to think about that. And essentially, we're conducting a mass experiment on children's developing brains with little understanding of the long-term consequences. So in my case, I know I talked about this the other day. I was prescribed psychiatric medication when I was just 7 years old after a school referral for mild inattentiveness, looking out the window, sloppy handwriting, leading to a diagnosis of ADHD and a prescription for Ritalin. I was a very sweet, bubbly kid, but these drugs made me very moody and agitated, and the adverse effects were mistaken for evidence that something else was wrong with me. And Prozac was prescribed to treat the very symptoms the drug had created in the first place. And I think what led to this prescription cascade and all these medications I never needed. So I was a happy, healthy child, and I didn't conform into these narrow preset expectations of how a child was supposed to behave and learn in the classroom setting. So that's what led to antidepressants, benzodiazepines, mood stabilizers, and antipsychotics I never truly needed, all before my 10th birthday. And I think we just need to understand that. I think we need to understand that this can lead to very devastating effects, giving it to children, and we don't really know the long-term consequences. I think parents need to be aware of the truth of what these drugs are, but they're really not given that information, that rather than correcting some underlying chemical deficiency, which is what we're led to believe, that's not true at all. Antidepressants are powerful psychoactive drugs that alter brain and body function in complex ways that researchers still don't even fully understand. And I just think it's probably not the best idea to give a child whose brain is still developing a psychoactive drug. And because there comes a lot of risks with that, because a lot of people who were put on at my age are now adults and they literally can't come off of it. They're dealing with emotional blunting, cognitive decline, so many issues. And I just don't think it's worth it just because you're not fitting into these preset norms of how a child is supposed to behave.
And so how do doctors sell these drugs to the parents? What do they say to them? That they're safe and effective? Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Your child's going to be great. What do they say?
Yeah, essentially, people are told that they're completely safe, completely effective and benign, but that is not the truth, and that's not the reality that so many people, the hundreds of thousands to millions of people on these online forums, their stories are showing. It's for decades, the public was told this lie, depression, anxiety, OCD is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. These drugs work by correcting that imbalance. This message was heavily promoted by pharmaceutical companies and became deeply embedded in our culture. This theory lacks scientific support. And, obviously this doesn't mean that anxiety, depression, mental health is not real. They absolutely are. Mental health conditions are complex and arise from an interaction of many factors, but evidence doesn't support the simple reductionist chemical imbalance story we were sold by the mental health industry. And I think doctors and patients have been led astray about the drugs to the point where they overestimate the benefits, minimize the harm. I think one of the most shocking things that I learned was antidepressants are approved based on short-term clinical trials, yet millions of people take them continuously for years or even decades, but we still lack a robust evidence base establishing the long-term safety and effectiveness of that kind of use. So I had always assumed that if I was being prescribed these medications long-term, they are FDA, they're FDA approved. They may they must have been thoroughly studied and they're completely safe. But when I really looked into it further, that's just not the case. And that was really surprising to look into. And people just aren't aware of this.
Danny, thank you. Okay, let's bring on Bob and Sherri. Let's all of us be on together for this last couple of minutes. Or 1.5 minutes. I want to hear. This whole thing is horrifying me, just so you know, and we will continue at CHD TV to highlight these stories, to warn these parents. What else do we need to do, Bob? And all of you answer this one. I want you all to answer. What do we collectively need to do? I think more stories. Keep those stories coming, like we do with the vaccines. And again, a message, all of you, to the young mum who's just had a call from the school. And what is going to happen after that, outside of going to the doctor and be told it's safe and effective, and look at the futures of being addicted to drugs, having sexual issues, all of those things we need to talk about, and we need to talk about it way more. Bob, you go first, and then let's hear from Sherri and Danny.
Right. Polly, you just said, what does a young mother or parents do when they get that phone call? Put your child on a IEP program, or just say no. Say no to any of these these drugs that these doctors try to offer you as far as solutions. Well, this is what the other children are doing at school, and like Danny and Sherri has said this morning, these are mind altering drugs. And the doctors are giving these drugs without very good informed consent. They have black box warnings on them. They have very little return on health, meaning it might have a significant impact at first, but long term, they're going to do more damage and lead more to polypharmacy. And what is really leading into poly, and which we talk about a lot, is it's feeding the medical industrial complex. And that's why we have just a national public safety crisis that's going on 4 times larger than opioids, because we not only have our school children on these, we have our foster children. And there's probably well over 80% of these children in foster home that are on these drugs. Our veterans, we've already learned that they're not really helping our veterans that are coming home with PTSD. And the biggest segment that's growing right now is our elderly. 1 out of every 3 women over 60 years old is on antidepressant medication. This is a national crisis, and we have to take action immediately.
We absolutely do. Sherri, let's hear from you.
Say no. Our children should be active, should be playing. They are not meant to sit in a classroom for 8 hours and stare at a screen or stare at a teacher and listen to what they're saying. Keep your children active. Say no to the medications. Just feed them good foods, organic foods. Keep them in activities and sports, and just let them be children. Say no to the doctors. Say no to the teachers. I'm not doing it.
That's right. And also, what even is ADHD? I mean, come on, it's just normal child's playing. So one mother said, "Oh, my child's got ADHD. Look at him lining up for baseball." He was like 4 years old, lining up for baseball. It's boring. It takes an hour to get your turn. It's boring. A normal child does not need medication. Danny.
Yeah, these are all really good points. And I have a lot of compassion for parents, because I understand maybe they're under pressure, they're outsourcing their trust to these professionals that we're taught to believe in and give this power to. And they are telling you, hey, taking this medication is the responsible thing to do. And maybe you feel like you don't really have a choice, but when you just really want your child to succeed. But I encourage parents to pause and make sure they're making fully informed decisions. And medication is not a first response. And, I just really learn about all the very serious risks that these drugs can cause. So, because very serious harms can occur and they can be life-threatening. And in order to make that informed decision, they should be aware of that. And unfortunately, that means they're going to have to do their own research and possibly going through the internet, because you really can't, your doctor sadly is not informed about these things. So I think that's really important to do your own research, be your own advocate. And yeah, that's a good point, is really what even is ADHD when you're just a normal child and you don't want to sit still in school. That's most children. That doesn't mean you have a disorder or there's something chemically wrong with your brain that needs to be fixed with drugs. That's just, yeah, that's not the case. And, you know, it oftentimes leads to more harm than good. And, you know, yeah, I think just be aware really of what SSRIs are, and that they are psychoactive drugs that affect the central nervous system. They're not chemical correctors fixing some underlying abnormality. That's what we're kind of told. That's what doctors tell people, is that they're going to fix a disorder, but that's really not what they are. That's just not the truth of it. That's pharmaceutical propaganda.
Danny and Sherri, I can't thank you both enough. And thank you for your bravery, for speaking out, for warning the young parents. It's so important. You two are utterly amazing. And Bob, as always, thank you for bringing us these stories. And to our viewers, we will be bringing you more stories. And if you have a story, please go to Bob or CHD TV, and we will get the information out there, which I believe is the only way we'll win. If the people stand up and speak out, that's what the dark side are afraid of more than anything else, is all of us collectively standing up and saying, this happened, and warning the future. So thank you, all of you. And
Thank you.
wonderful rest of your day. To our viewers, we'll be back
Thank you,
tomorrow.
Polly.
Pray big, everyone. Stand firm.
Bye-bye.
And we'll see you tomorrow.
"34 hours after he was vaccinated, he passed away in his bassinet. I found him unresponsive and cold.
My name is Nick Kendall,
My name is Melissa Pike, and this is Sawyer John Kendall.
our son.
When he was born, he was beautiful. He was perfect. He was 7 pounds, 7 ounces. He was breastfeeding, doing very well. We brought him home, and he was a very good sleeper when we first brought him home, and he ate very well. He loved to be outside in his stroller, walking with Mom while Dad was at work. And he always waited for Daddy to get home to snuggle him to sleep.
He was the perfect baby from the moment we brought him home.
They gave him Hep B.
Mhm.
Did they give him vitamin K?
I feel like they did.
Yeah. On October 20th of 2022, he went in for a well child check, and we were told that he had a virus, and he had a rash, and he had cold symptoms, but he didn't have a fever. The rash started improving over the next week. I was giving him daily breast milk baths, and he never had a fever, and he didn't seem uncomfortable. And 1 week later, on October 27th, we brought him into the pediatrician's office for his 2-month vaccinations, and he still had cold symptoms. And I had asked the pediatrician if he was sure that he needed the vaccines because he had a cold and was diagnosed with a virus a week prior. And the pediatrician told us yes, because he didn't have a fever. So we trusted the doctor to vaccinate Sawyer John, and he didn't flinch when he got the vaccines. We brought him home maybe within a half an hour after the appointment, and he let out a horrible scream that we had never heard before. We thought that he was just wet, needed to be changed, and that wasn't the case. He went to sleep fine that night, and the next day he was a little bit fussy. I held him for a while that day, and I'm so glad I did, because 34 hours after he was vaccinated, he passed away in his bassinet. I found him unresponsive and cold. And I picked him up and I told Nick that he was gone. So Nick called 911 and we immediately performed CPR on him in our living room. We couldn't bring him back. So the EMTs came. There were so many people there. I had to run outside because I didn't want to see my baby like that. They tried for almost an hour to get him back and they couldn't. And then we were told that he passed away from SIDS. We found out on Christmas Eve that the medical examiner had determined his death as asphyxiation.
Improper sleep conditions is what was on the report.
Improper sleep.
Suboptimal
Suboptimal
sleep conditions. He was in his bassinet on the blanket that he was laying on that was on the bassinet, and he didn't even have anything in his bassinet with him. Nothing. And to read those results on Christmas Eve and to think that you were the one that caused your baby to pass away, it was just awful. I didn't want to accept the answer. I didn't believe it. So I requested further testing, and it took me 10 months to get it back and find somebody that would actually order all the tests for him after the medical examiner refused to do the tests and telling me that if there were aluminum in his system, there wouldn't be enough to be the cause of his death. The aluminum level in his blood was 95 micrograms per liter. Anything over 50 micrograms per liter in an adult is toxic. His was 95, and he was 8 weeks old.
It's just been an uphill battle fighting with the medical examiner's office with all this, and them trying to cover this up and make it look like it was our fault. And we knew it wasn't, so we kept fighting. And finally found someone that has our back with us and is helping us do further testing and not just believing what the medical examiner told us, because it was basically a lie, I feel. They just told us what was easy for them to just write it off as our fault, and instead of facing this as a vaccine injury death. You get
every single 2-month vaccine.
And so that pediatrics one as well, it's got like 6 or whatever in one.
Mm-hmm.
So he had so many.
While he was trying to fight
sick.
something off.
He still had the rash.
He still had the rash, he still had the cold symptoms.
The only thing he didn't have was a fever. He told
said
us.
no.
Yeah, he told us that he thought it would be fine where there was no fever, and I mean, Sawyer still looked, I mean, he was a great baby too. You wouldn't know he was sick really, but I mean, he was sick, but I think just the doctor just went off the no fever, so we thought it was going to be okay, I guess. He insisted that it would be fine getting the vaccinations that day.
He promised us he would be fine. I don't even think he remembers us.
I doubt it.
I don't know if he remembered us that day. I had to ask him to take his temperature, to listen to his lungs, to listen to his belly,
Melissa pretty much conducted the whole
to look at his
doctor's
rash,
appointment.
thinking that that might be a reason for him to say, well, we can always hold off on these vaccines or spread them out. We didn't know that there was an option to spread them out, spread the vaccines out over time, or to just say no. But we already felt like we were looked at different because neither of us got the COVID-19 vaccine. And all of my doctors knew that.
Even in the hospital when she was pregnant, I mean, it's hard to point fingers, but we definitely were treated different in the hospital. We're looked at different because they knew we weren't. As soon as we came in, they knew we weren't. And I could tell they knew we weren't vaccinated. We got put in that, on that side of things as the unvaccinated.
I lost my job right before getting pregnant with Sawyer for not getting the COVID-19 vaccine, and I don't think that if I would have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine that I would have been able to carry him, because I have endometriosis. So I've struggled to get pregnant for many years, and when we finally had Sawyer, he was my miracle.
He really was.
Baby. I didn't think I'd ever be able to carry a child full term, and then I did.
And he was
All for him to be taken away. And this is what I have left. This is my baby now. I had him cremated because I wanted him to be with us.
We wanted to take him everywhere. We went.
Like we would if he was still alive. This is why we're here. I can't tell anybody not to get their children vaccinated or to get them vaccinated. But I would just recommend that you really think about it before bringing your child in to be vaccinated, because really babies don't need to be vaccinated at all. A lot of places wait until they're at least 2 years old because that's when the blood-brain barrier grows together. And harmful toxins can't pass it as well. Babies, when they're this young, that blood-brain barrier has not closed off. And I think that's how they found all the aluminum that had gotten to his brain, ceased his respirations, and caused cardiac arrest. So there was nothing we could do to bring him back. You can take care of your own child. You don't need a pediatrician. You can measure your child and weigh your child right at home. There's no reason you need a pediatrician, because all they are there for in the beginning is just to, I feel like, just to push the vaccines. I'm a nurse, and I feel even more like a failure now. I feel like I failed Sawyer as both a mom and a nurse, because I should have known. But in school, as a nurse, all they do is teach you the schedule of childhood vaccines. They don't tell you what's in them, what they can do, how they react to the body once inside. And we trusted them.
We did.
And I trusted what I learned in school. Some days I just, I started nursing as a career because I wanted to help people. And now I feel like we're helping people after the medical system has already ruined them.
Okay. I don't really know words. I don't know what we say to you other than we're really sorry. We were lied to. You were lied to. In your profession and as a mother and a father. And we will put Sawyer's photo on the bus. We will write his name on the bus and we will not forget him. I'm tell you that. I'm sorry, guys. People watching now just sending you so much love. You're not on your own, sadly. There's so many who see these babies. Thank you for speaking.
We just want to spread awareness to other parents and let them know that
No parent should have to go through this.
to make
Especially
sure
if it
you're
can be prevented. This can be prevented.
advocate really hard for your children. They're your children, not the doctors.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.